The train station at Belmont had always been a place of eerie fascination for me. It was a relic of a bygone era, its crumbling architecture and flickering gas lamps telling tales of a time long past. I had heard whispers of its haunted history, tales of restless spirits and ghostly apparitions, but I had never truly believed in the supernatural, not until that fateful evening when I encountered the ghost in human disguise. It was a bitterly cold night, and I had just missed the last train of the evening. With no other options, I found myself alone on the dimly lit platform, the station clock ticking away the minutes like a heartbeat in the stillness of the night. As I waited, a thick fog began to roll in, shrouding the platform in an otherworldly mist. The air grew colder, and I wrapped my coat tightly around me, trying to ward off the chill that seemed to seep into my bones. I heard the distant whistle of a train approaching, and I felt a flicker of relief. But as the train pulled into the station, my relief turned to unease. The train was unlike any I had ever seen, a vintage steam locomotive, its carriages adorned with ornate carvings and dimly lit by flickering lanterns. It looked as though it had been plucked from a bygone era, a relic of the past. I stepped aboard the train, my heart pounding as I glanced around the dimly lit carriage. The other passengers sat in silence, their faces obscured by the shadows. It was as if I had stepped into a sepia-toned photograph, a scene from a time long past. I took a seat near the window, my mind racing with confusion and unease. The fog outside had grown thicker, obscuring any view of the station or the world beyond. I was trapped in this strange and unsettling place with no idea of where I was headed. As the train pulled away from the station, a shiver ran down my spine. The atmosphere in the carriage was heavy and oppressive, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. The other passengers sat in silence, their eyes fixed on something beyond my field of vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, that I had stumbled into a nightmare from which there was no escape. I tried to speak to the other passengers, but they remained motionless, their faces hidden in the shadows. And then, as the train rumbled on through the fog-shrouded night, I heard it, a soft, mournful whisper, like the sigh of a lost soul. It seemed to come from the shadows, a voice that spoke of sorrow and despair. "Help me," the voice whispered, barely audible but filled with a haunting urgency. I turned toward the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. The other passengers remained motionless, their eyes fixed on something beyond my sight. But the voice continued, growing louder and more insistent. "Help me," it whispered, the words sending a chill down my spine. "You must help me." I couldn't ignore the desperation in the voice, the sense of anguish that seemed to fill the carriage. I rose from my seat, determined to find the source of the voice and offer whatever assistance I could. As I moved through the dimly lit carriage, the fog outside seemed to press against the windows, obscuring any view of the world beyond. I couldn't see anything outside, no signs of civilization or landmarks to orient myself. And then, as I reached the end of the carriage, I saw her. A young woman, her face contorted with sorrow, her eyes filled with an eerie, otherworldly light. She was dressed in clothing from another era, her gown tattered and faded. "Help me," she whispered, her voice filled with a haunting sadness. "I am trapped here, unable to find peace." I couldn't tear my eyes from her, the sense of unease growing with each passing second. She seemed to radiate an otherworldly presence, a spectral aura that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You must listen," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I have been trapped on this train for eternity, unable to find release, but there is a way to set me free." She went on to tell me a story of betrayal and heartbreak, of a love that had gone terribly wrong. She had been a passenger on this very train, bound for a rendezvous with her lover. But her lover had betrayed her, leaving her heartbroken and alone. In her despair, she had taken her own life, and her spirit had become trapped on the train, unable to move on to the afterlife. She told me that the only way to set her free was to find her lover and reunite them in death. I listened in horror and disbelief, unsure of how to respond. It all seemed so impossible, so far-fetched, but there was a sincerity in her eyes, a sense of longing and desperation that I couldn't ignore. As the train continued to rumble through the fog-shrouded night, I made a decision. I would help her, find her lover, and reunite them in death. It was a daunting and impossible task, but I couldn't ignore the anguish in her voice, the torment of a spirit trapped in eternal limbo. And then, as I agreed to help her, the train suddenly lurched to a stop. The fog outside began to clear, revealing the familiar surroundings of Belmont station. I stepped off the train, my heart heavy with a sense of loss and confusion. The vintage steam locomotive remained in the station, its lanterns flickering in the night. I turned back to the train, but it was empty. The other passengers, the ghostly woman, all had vanished, leaving only an empty carriage. As I stood there, trying to make sense of the strange and haunting experience, I heard a voice from behind me, a voice I recognized. "Are you all right?" It was the voice of the station master, a concerned look on his face. I nodded, unable to find the words to explain what had just happened. It all seemed so unreal, so impossible. The station master led me away from the train, his voice a comforting presence in the eerie stillness of the night. And as I walked away from the haunted train, I couldn't help but wonder if I had truly encountered a ghost in human disguise, or if it had all been a figment of my imagination. One thing was certain. I would never forget that haunting night at Belmont Station. The night I had come face to face with the unknown, and the night that had left me with more questions than answers. Subscribe for more story.